sometimes agents, cops, etc., police officers, when they go undercover, especially the women, they use nudity and sexual exploitation to attract the attention of somebody, or to deceive them, to con them, to gain their interest, to distract them from something else that's going on, to win their trust, etc. Those women would then later go to church and they're Christians, and they're saved. They are. Christ came to save the sinners. He didn't come to save the righteous. He didn't come to save the people that were doing great and doing good and were living perfect lives. He came to save the imperfect people. He came to save the ones that were struggling and battling between the dark and the light. The ones that have a struggle between darkness and evilness and righteousness and goodness. And if you're saved, I mean, if you're perfect and you're not going through any of that, then you don't even need him. So why are you even worried about what anybody else is doing? You're perfect. Go on somewhere. You don't even need Jesus. But it's those of us struggling between the dark and the light that need him. And that is who he's come to save. And a lot of us have dirty jobs. We have a dirty job to do. And the descriptions of those jobs can be nasty and involve sin. And there's an exception for those sins, just like in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve had to sin in order for us to know things and to have children, and that was part of God's plan all along, was for us to have kids and to propagate. Everything was having children. The animals were having children and multiplying. The trees were having children and multiplying. And it was his plan for Adam and Eve to have children and multiply, and they couldn't do that in the Garden of Eden, because they didn't even know what sex was. They didn't even know that they were naked. They had to sin in order to know that they were naked, in order to start having children, etc., etc. So this was a sin that you're not supposed to sin. He doesn't want you to go around doing it all the time. Don't go around having premarital sex all the time. Don't go around looking at people's nakedness all the time. But there's an exception where you need to do it. There was an exception for Adam and Eve to sin. They had to do it in order to know things, in order for us to be born, in order for the world to be populated, in order for mankind to multiply. So there was repercussions for that, like I was saying in the second video. So if you're coming to this video, please see part 2 and part 1. Don't come in at the end of the story and think you know what you're talking about and spread a bunch of gossip and lies and rumors and stuff, and you don't even know what I'm talking about because you came in at the middle or the end of the story. See videos 1 and 2, because you're coming in at the end at this point. It is really important that that you know what I was saying about, even Marines, having to, reap a karma mentally or physically. They lose their leg or something for killing somebody, something somewhere along the line. Adam and Eve were punished for their sins, but their sin had to take place. There was an exception where God knew that sin was going to have to take place, and that it was going, not only did he know it was going to happen, but it had to take place. And so, there's a lot of things, and that's probably not the best example, because that was not one of the times where he allowed a sin to take place or commanded a sin to take place or anything like that. But sometimes it's got to happen. And I feel like I'm okay and I'm where I'm supposed to be. And it might be because I need to deliver a message, maybe the gospel, maybe somebody's struggling the same way between the light and the dark, and they don't know what to do. Maybe they're thinking about quitting their job because their job requires them to sin, or maybe they're thinking about leaving their spouse because their spouse keeps them in sin. They're trying to be a Christian, but their spouse is a sinner and it makes them a sinner. Well, let me tell you this. The Bible says that even if your spouse is a sinner, to stay with them, because you and your righteousness will make them righteous. So you save them through your godliness. So it's okay if they're ungodly. You don't have to leave them. And I think that goes with our jobs too. Some people will be called to leave their jobs. They don't need to do it, or wherever they're going, where God wants to take them, that job's not going to allow them to get there. They would have to quit their job. But just because one person quit their job, or like I mentioned in the other video, Paul had to quit killing Jews, does not mean that every single person is going to be called to quit their job. Their job, they might need to stay at their job for 10 years or 30 years or finish the contract. Maybe they're under contract to do that job. They have to go through with their contract, go through with it. Don't break the law, because you're supposed to abide by the law. You have a legal agreement. You stick to your contract. You go through with it, and just don't sign a new one if you feel like you have to leave. All right? Do what your job requires you to do. Do what you agreed to do. Leave. I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I feel like I'm supposed to be going even more into it. I'm supposed to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more famous. And eventually one day it might come to, like the CIA agents, like the police, where I might have to use nudity or something to better my career, or to get to where I need to get, to deceive, manipulate a situation to get the results or the information I need to get, etc. I hope not. And I will cross that bridge when I get there, and you best believe I will be fasting and praying about that one, and expecting at least 20,000, maybe $1,000,000 out of it. And of course, that would all be situational. I told the Lord too. I said, if I was already a millionaire, $20,000 wouldn't make me take my clothes off for nothing. If I was already, a billionaire, there wouldn't $1,000,000 wouldn't make me do it. But where I'm at now, and living how I'm living now, and struggling from paycheck to paycheck, I would take my clothes off for 10,000 if my husband approved of it, and if I felt like the Lord was okay with it. $10,000 would be all it takes. Honestly, maybe even $6,000 at this point where I'm living now. But it just depends. It's situational. It's case by case. It's a personal relationship with the Lord, as I said in the second video. It's it's between me and him. It's not for anyone else to judge. It's no one else's business. It's between me and the Lord. And I've got to answer to him and only him. And I hope that other people can understand that, and that I make sense, and that whatever reason I'm going, wherever I'm going, that he gets me there fast, and gets me there safely, and gets me there quickly. And it might be so that one day I'm a billionaire, so I can, donate that money to somebody one day. Who knows? And 30 years from now, I might be tired of being a billionaire and give it all to somebody else who needs it. Who knows what will happen in 30 years from now? It might be so I can travel and be a missionary or something from country to country. Who knows why I'm doing what I'm doing right now? And who knows if it's going to go anywhere? Maybe this is just a test for somebody else. Maybe I'm trying to go somewhere that I'm not going to go, because the Lord needs my message to go to somebody who's trying to go to the same place I'm going, and they are going to be there, and they need to know that he's okay with them. I don't know. He loves everybody. He loves his children. He sent Jesus Christ to save us. So that's something that we all have to think about and remember, and just trust in the Lord, and trust that it'll be okay, and do what you have to do, and get where you're going, and get there as quickly as you can, and get there as righteously, as godly as you possibly can. And try not to let your job influence who you really are too. That's the other thing. Like, a lot of times studies show that when we read a book, that character stays in our head for a long time after we're done reading that book, and we can actually act that character out in our real lives. That goes on in our brains, so that it's very natural. Like, for example, I cuss in a lot of my stories, and therefore I cuss a lot in real life. And that's because my stories kind of carry over with me sometimes. So I have to remind myself not to do that, and ask for forgiveness. And, it's a battle and a struggle between the light and the dark. But I do it, and I manage, and I'm successful. And I love the Lord, and he knows that, and he loves me for that. And that's pretty much the only thing I can say about it. and just hope that other people understand what I'm saying and where I'm coming from and aren't so hateful and judgmental, because it's not your place to judge my Christianity, whether I'm saved or I'm not saved, or I'm a Christian or I'm not a Christian. That's not your place to judge. That is all God's. That is God's. So, yeah.